Congresswoman Sara Jacobs just asked the question that should terrify every American who remembers Iraq. Are we walking into another forever war, and does anyone in this administration even know what the endgame is? What you're about to hear isn't just another Pentagon hearing. It's a masterclass in how wars get sold to the public. Vague objectives, classified plans, and officials who can't answer the most basic questions. Are we at war? What's the plan? How much will it cost? How long will this last? Under Secretary Colby sat in that chair unable or unwilling to say whether we're at war with Iran, whether regime change is the goal, or what happens if Iran becomes a failed state. He promised plans exist, but wouldn't say what they are. He cited timelines but couldn't commit to them. He acknowledged risks but offered no strategy to avoid them. And here's the kicker. The rhetoric coming from this administration: destroy their capabilities, take over your government, this is your only chance, is identical to the language used to justify Iraq in 2003. Same promises, same secrecy, same refusal to be straight with Congress or the American people. 6 service members are already dead, dozens more injured, $90 million in fighter jets lost, and the official testifying can't tell us if this is even legally a war. This isn't partisan theater, it's an institutional alarm bell. And if we ignore it, we'll be paying for it in lives, treasure, and credibility for the next 20 years.
Thank you. Ms. Jacobs, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Colby, good to see you again. To date, the department has failed to comply with Section 1067 of the FY25 NDAA, which requires the department to provide us with copies of each extant execute order issued at the direction of the President and the Secretary. When can we expect the department to comply with this law?
I'll have to get back to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Are we at war with Iran?
I think we're in a military action at this point. I'll leave it to Congress and lawyers, et cetera, from the administration to determine the exact.
Okay, so yesterday, the president said we're doing very well on the war front, and previously he said we should expect American casualties because, quote, that often happens in war. So is the president wrong when he says we are at war?
Well, I won't add or subtract anything to the president. I wouldn't presume to do so, but I know this is a material matter in front of the Congress and between the administration, and I'm not the right person to weigh in on exactly the criteria.
Okay. You said that regime change is not one of the objectives of this military operation. Is that correct?
Of the U.S. military campaign at this time as directed by the president.
Okay. If that's the case, can you explain why the first military target of the joint U.S.-Israeli operation was Iran's Supreme Leader Khamenei?
My understanding is that's an Israeli strike. We can get you more detail, including this afternoon in the classified briefing.
Okay, well, President Trump clearly disagrees because he immediately took credit for this, saying, I got him before he got me. And shortly after the strikes on Saturday, Trump told the Iranian people, bombs will be dropping everywhere. When we're finished, take over your government. It will be yours. This is probably your only chance for generations. And your boss, Secretary Hexeth, literally said he made sure that the people responsible in the Iranian regime to try and take out President Trump were on the target list. How does arming the Kurds and encouraging a civil war advance our military objectives of degrading Iran's power projection capabilities?
Ma'am, I'm not sure I can comment on that. I'm just not tracking it specifically, but I can get into it, get back to you or into classified.
Okay, great. I'd like to enter into the record 3 articles about how we are arming the Kurds.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, so you won't say if we're at war. You won't say if regime change is actually part of our thing. Do you agree that there is a risk of Iran becoming a failed state?
I think there are a wide range of risks, but I think those are the kinds of things that we are precisely seeking to avoid and capitalize on to make sure it's net beneficial for the American people.
Okay, and does the department actually have a plan to avoid that and prevent a failed state in this very strategic part of the world?
Well, without fixating on the specific eventuality, ma'am, I would say the department is actively planning to ensure that we are, deliver on the president's objective of a net beneficial result for this military campaign.
Okay, you keep saying that it's important that we have a plan and that you are working on the plan. What is the plan?
Ma'am, I can, it may be worth when my colleagues, or we can go in, but particularly when my colleagues come over and brief this afternoon, you may ask them. Obviously, we're not going to talk about that in open session.
Okay. How long will this war last? How much longer will our service members have to sacrifice their lives?
So I'm not going to take away the president's decision space. He's got the wide range. He's the master of that. As he has indicated, and Chairman Kaine as well, the military campaign, at least at this point, has been scoped out, or I would say people have discussed it as roughly 3, 4, 5 weeks. But that, of course, does not constrain the president's decision space. But again, goes back to the kind of phasing of the military campaign that's been given specifically to the U.S. Armed Forces.
Okay, and what about cost? Can you say how much this will cost the American people?
I'll get back to you, ma'am. I can't give you an answer at this point.
Okay. Mr. Colby, at his first press conference, your boss, Secretary Hegseth, said this mission is laser-focused, destroy offensive missiles, destroy missile production, destroy their Navy, and they will never have nuclear weapons. In 2003, just as Operation Iraqi Freedom was getting underway, President Bush said, our mission is clear, to disarm Iraq of weapons of mass destruction, to end the regime's support for terrorism, and to free the Iraqi people. Remind me, Under Secretary Colby, how long did Operation Iraqi Freedom last?
I'm actually not sure technically, a decade or something.
It took 8 years before Iraq became even remotely stable at a cost of thousands of American lives and trillions of taxpayer dollars. Secretary Hegseth said this week that we're not doing nation building. We don't do quagmires, no democracy building exercise. In fact, his predecessor as Secretary of Defense, Secretary Rumsfeld, said, and I quote, I don't do quagmires. You just said that this isn't going to be another Iraq. Secretary Rumsfeld himself said, of course it won't be Vietnam. We're going to go in, overthrow Saddam, and get out. That's it. The American people are not stupid, Under Secretary Colby. This administration keeps telling us this is not Iraq while using the exact same arguments that were used to justify the war in Iraq. We have already had 6 service members die in this war and dozens more injured. And you can't even give me an answer on what the plan is or what the objectives really are. Our embassies have been attacked. At least $90 million worth of fighter jets were shot down by our allies. And you literally can't even tell me whether this is a war, what we're trying to achieve, or how much it's going to cost the American people. My generation has been paying our entire lives for forever wars that your president promised to end, and yet you sit here today unable to provide us with any clarity. Our service members and the American people deserve better. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Luttrell, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you.
What Congresswoman Jacobs did in that hearing room wasn't just ask questions. She systematically dismantled the administration's entire justification for military action against Iran by exposing a pattern we've seen before, one that cost thousands of American lives and trillions of dollars. Let me walk you through why every single evasion from Under Secretary Colby should set off alarm bells. Start with the most fundamental question. Are we at war? Colby couldn't answer it. He said military action, but wouldn't use the word war, even after the president himself said we should expect casualties, because that often happens in war. This isn't semantic hair-splitting. It's a legal and constitutional crisis. Congress has the sole power to declare war. If the executive branch refuses to call something a war while conducting military operations that kill American service members, they're bypassing constitutional checks on executive power. The evasion protects decision-makers from accountability while putting service members in harm's way under undefined legal authority. Then, there's the predication problem. The administration claims regime change isn't an objective, yet the first target was Iran's supreme leader. The president immediately took credit saying, I got him before he got me, and told Iranians to take over your government. Secretary Hegseth confirmed he made sure people who targeted Trump were on the kill list. That's not degrading military capabilities. That's personal vendetta wrapped in national security language. When you arm Kurdish separatists and encourage civil war while claiming you're not pursuing regime change, you're not being strategic. You're being dishonest. Jacobs then exposed the planning vacuum. Colby kept saying we have a plan but couldn't describe it. He cited a 3 to 5 week timeline that doesn't constrain the president's decision space, which means there is no timeline. He couldn't estimate costs. He couldn't explain how arming insurgents advances military objectives. He couldn't articulate what happens if Iran becomes a failed state in one of the world's most strategic regions. This is how quagmires begin, not with malice, but with the arrogant assumption that you can control chaos you deliberately create. The Iraq comparison isn't rhetorical flourish, it's pattern recognition. In 2003, officials promised a quick surgical operation to eliminate WMDs and free the Iraqi people. We don't do quagmires, Rumsfeld said. The mission was laser-focused. Sound familiar? Hegseth used nearly identical language this week. The problem isn't that officials lie, it's that they genuinely believe they can manage outcomes in complex societies they don't understand. They couldn't in Iraq. They couldn't in Afghanistan. And every piece of evidence suggests they haven't learned the lesson. Here's what Colby's evasions reveal about institutional rot. When career officials can't give straight answers to basic oversight questions, it signals one of two things. Either they genuinely don't have plans, which is terrifying, or they have plans they know Congress and the public would reject, which is worse. Either way, the result is the same: decisions of enormous consequence made in secret, insulated from democratic accountability, with costs borne by service members and taxpayers who never consented to the mission. The human cost is already mounting: 6 Americans dead, dozens wounded, and for what clearly defined objective? What metric of success? Colby couldn't say. When you can't articulate victory conditions, you can't know when to stop. That's the definition of forever war. Not duration, but the absence of achievable goals. Jacobs ended with a generational warning. Her generation has spent their entire lives funding wars justified by the same vague promises and classified plans that Colby offered that day. The loss of trust isn't theoretical. It's why recruiting numbers are down. It's why veterans struggle to explain what their sacrifices achieved. It's why the public has stopped believing official assurances about military necessity. If you care about preventing another decades-long disaster, demand answers now. Not in classified sessions where accountability disappears, not in vague promises of plans that exist somewhere, in public, on the record, with specifics. Because the pattern is clear, the warning signs are flashing, and the officials asking for trust are using the exact playbook that failed catastrophically 20 years ago.